All right. Hey, everybody. Mike Davis here. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine. Well, I guess actually late night with Lovecraft eZine. So I'm good, little buddy. Thank you. Telling my tech guy that I'm in good shape. And there goes my alarm. I don't know why I had that on. All right. So hey, everybody. Welcome. Kevin, Dave, Alan, Jay. I know, Dave. Right? I do not. I don't even know what I was thinking. Here, let me go full screen here. I don't know what I set it for. Unthinkingly, I set it for 5 p.m. Central, which is 6 p.m. Eastern, which is the usual Sunday time. So, so there you go. But I guess it was easily corrected, and you guys, some folks who came in at 6, had a nice conversation. I see. I love seeing that. So, not a waste. And somebody had faith in me that I would show back up at 11. So, and I'm here. Hey, Joe. So, yeah, what can I say? Hey, if you're watching live, shout out, um, say hi. Uh, so you guys know what happened. We lost our dear friend Rick Lay this just a few days ago, and I really wasn't sure if I could do a Thursday night, a late night Thursday night tonight, but in the end, I decided to do it because I just, if nothing else, I want to say a few words about Rick. Uh, hey, Thunder Kitten, Mitch. First of all, one of the hardest things to take, besides the fact that we lost him, was the fact that he was on the podcast this past Sunday. And did he look great? No, but he looked just like his normal self these days. I'm gonna I'm gonna do some. Um, my wife suggested this, um, a video with clips from Rick from over the years called, Wisdom from Rick or Rick's Wisdom or something like that. And if you go back 11 or 12 years, Christ, I've been doing this a long time. If you go back 11 or 12 years, then you can see how Rick's physical condition has deteriorated over the years. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how I met Rick in the first place and how he became a panelist way back in the day. Uh, hey Chaz, hey Kim. Yeah, so way back in the day, and the podcast veterans may know this, but um, I had just been doing the podcast a very short time, and it was informal as hell. I mean, it's always informal, right? But I wasn't even trying to make a podcast. I was just saying, hey, every week, why don't we get together and talk about, geek stuff and horror stuff and all that. So this one guy, Dave from the UK, who I think is still hanging around now and then. Uh, he he suggested that, if I remember right, he suggested that we talk about Wald Newton. Um, and for those of you who don't know what Wald Newton is, Rick is actually the best one to explain that. Uh, I'll explain it in a minute, just from Wikipedia, because I tell you what, the real expert just left us. There are other experts out there, though, friends of Rick and everything. But so we talked about, he was a guest, basically, you know, even though, again, I didn't think of things so formally at that time. And so he came on and talked about Wald Newton, which is WOLD. And then the next word is Newton, just like it sounds, for those of you who don't know what it means and want to look it up. I certainly did not at the time. But Rick came on, he talked about it, genius as always, and I just thought, man, this guy is so knowledgeable. Is such a nice guy. I wonder if he would even consider, joining us every week. It was maybe a little bit after that that I finally said, "Hey, we're doing a podcast. This is a podcast." But luckily for all of us, Rick said yes. Thanks, Alan. That's my wife's idea, and it's actually inspired in part by Chaz as well. Uh, and remind me to talk about that in a minute. I'm talking about the Rick's wisdom thing, the idea, the series of clips. So where was I? Oh, Walt Newton. He consented. He loved the idea. He didn't consent. He loved it. And I remember he told me Joe Pulver was already on the show, and he told me later that he came on that first time and didn't realize that Joe Pulver would be there, and just was like, "Wow, Joe Pulver! I'm on the same podcast with Joe Pulver." He was really uh, awed by that, and Joe was awed by Rick. It was very mutual. Mutual, excuse me. Dave says, "I loved it. I loved when you had Les Klinger on," and he asked, "Was this the Rick Lay?" Yep. And Rick's like someone who read my work. Plenty of people read his work. By the way, look him up on Amazon. But you know, if you want a nonfiction book of Rick's to read, and you're into that old timey guy, maybe I said this last week or the week before, just in passing, before Rick left. But if you're into The Shadow from the old radio program and from the pulps, uh, Rick was probably the greatest living uh, expert on The Shadow. If not, certainly, there's only a couple of others like him, I would guess. And he just knew everything. And it's called I can't remember what it's called, but I'll have it in a minute. Maybe if somebody could Google it for me, that would be great. And put it in the side chat. But it's a really interesting read, and it's available in Kindle, which I like, especially for nonfiction books, because, well, let's face it, I like it for everything. But you can it's searchable, and you can do highlights and all that. I really love that. My highlights, Alan Smalling earlier. Chronology of Shadows. Thank you, Alan. I was about to say your name. Chronology of Shadows, a timeline of the Shadow's exploits. One of the first things you'll find out is that Lamont Cranston was not even really the Shadow's real name. So it's a really interesting read. And, one of the reasons why I like highlights too, Alan, you asked me about Obsidian, is I've got it set up so every time I do a highlight in a book, it goes to my note program, Obsidian. And it's put into its own category, book highlights, and it's under its own title so they don't get mixed up or anything. It's a really cool way to keep track of what you're reading and keep track of what you're highlighting. And it's a way to keep track of your reading without keeping score. One of the things to each their own, okay? One of the things I don't like about Goodreads and other similar websites and apps is how it kind of encourages competition. I read five more books last year than Dave did. And that's not how I read. I'll frequently pull a book off the shelf and spend 90 minutes on it in the middle of it, a book that I've read already, and I want to revisit pages, things like that. So anyway, it's a great way to keep track of your reading you know, without it being some sort of competition that our civilization seems to turn everything into. Anyway, Chronology of Shadows. Thank you for finding that, Alan. I gotta turn up the air. Okay. So, where was I, guys? That's how Rick came to be on the show. And he loved talking about weird fiction, Lovecraftian fiction, but he just was an all-around geek, like many of us. But he loved Doctor Who. He loved the pulps, obviously. He loved The Shadow. He loved Tarzan, Conan, you name it. So someone, and I apologize to whoever said this, commented on the YouTube video, I think it was, that I posted about Rick. Someone said that the day Rick died, they wrote, "A library burned today." And I apologize, I don't remember who said it, but it's such a, yeah, it's so on point. Besides the wonderful person that he was, all that knowledge has is gone. It's one of the tragic things about death. However, luckily for us, all the knowledge isn't gone because two people sort of pointed this out to me. One of them was my wife, and one of them was Chaz. My wife's idea, as I said, was to get some help with this, but to try and pick out over the years a bunch of clips from Rick talking about various things. And by the way, there's several Patreon podcasts that's just me and Rick. He's um, giving away his knowledge to the Patreons. Um, so that was the first thing, that she had several good ideas. And then I got Chaz's permission to share this, but Chaz left me a message the other night and he said that something along the lines that all of Rick's knowledge and expertise has actually not been lost. There's much of it been saved because he was on the podcast. I thought about how true that is, and I wish AI could actually do something useful and go through all the videos and pick out everything where Rick says something for more than 30 to 60 seconds and give it to me in a list. That would be a useful use of AI. But it seems that it never wants to do the grunt work. It just wants to write poetry, right? Um, I also have an idea. I'm sure just about everybody watching this knows who Joe Pulver was. And Joe Pulver was, of course, one of my best friends, as was Rick. And he died 4 years ago, just this past week. And he was a panelist too, as you know. But he was Mr. King in Yellow. He was basically the guy who was the expert on Carcosa, the King in Yellow, all that stuff. And he wrote a lot of fiction. He edited King in Yellow books, which, if you haven't read, they're amazing. Um, and I find the Carcosa mythos very, very fascinating. And as did Joe. I knew about it, but Joe really introduced me to it in a much bigger way. So we've said over the last 4 years that Joe is now in Carcosa. So I had an idea. If anybody out there is watching this and you're an artist, I have an idea about an image, a painting, a drawing, whatever, of Carcosa, something that's you know there's plenty of images on Google image search where you can get some ideas, of course. And then I had in mind Joe Pulver welcoming Rick to Carcosa this week. Hey Ben, what do you think of that idea, buddy? Uh, it's funny you just popped on because I was meaning to run that by you, see what you thought. So, Joe welcoming Rick into Carcosa. If you're an artist, email me, lovecraftezine@gmail.com, and let me know if you want to do something like that. If you need or want payment, you certainly deserve it for your work, and I will do absolutely what I can for that. Um, oh, thanks, Ben. So yeah, uh, Ben says, I was telling Mike last night about that last Patreon hangout you and Rick and I stayed on for like an extra hour for. I'm sure you're really glad you did, um, you guys. I bitterly regret last Friday night rescheduling the Patreon podcast to tomorrow night. And it just wasn't working out for most of the panelists, and I'm not blaming them because I could certainly have done it myself, with you guys, with the $10 and up patrons. Um, but I didn't. And Rick really would make every one of those things that he could, which was like 95% of them. So I got to think he would have made it there last Friday night, and it would have been one more last chance to speak with him. I will tell you this, that if I would have known Sunday was the last time I'd talked to him, I would have kept him on till he just had to go, out of tiredness. And he would have stayed too. He would have loved it. So, yeah, yeah. Ben's agreeing. He would always make the Patreon hangouts and uh, stay on past where I could a lot of the time, just because he just loved talking about this stuff with everyone. And Rick was a great fiction writer. He's got a lot out there. All you got to do is Google it or go to Amazon, type in Rick Lai, L-A-I. But you really see his genius with nonfiction books like Chronology of Shadows and so forth. Now, as I mentioned, he came to my attention because someone suggested he talk about Wold Newton. I'm going to read from uh, Wikipedia now. In real life, a meteorite called the Wold, W-O-L-D, Cottage meteorite fell in Wold Newton, Yorkshire, England, December 13, 1795. Philip Jose Farmer suggested in two fictional biographies, Tarzan Alive, a definitive biography of Lord Greystoke, 1972, and Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life, 1973, that this meteorite caused genetic mutations in the occupants of two passing coaches due to ionization. It's a hand wave thing, right? Many of their descendants were thus endowed with extremely high intelligence and strength, as well as an exceptional capacity and drive to perform good, or as the case may be, evil deeds. The progeny of these travelers are purported to have been the real-life originals of fictionalized characters, both heroic and villainous over the last few hundred years. Like Tarzan, Sherlock Holmes, Phileas Fogg, and so on. I wonder if it has. I don't know if it's possible to get a complete list because it just became this really vast thing. But it's just interesting that that's the way that I was introduced to Rick, even before your time, Ben. Uh, Long time ago. So anyway, how you guys doing? I hope you're doing better than I am. I'll tell you one thing. I found out. I just happened to be looking at my phone, and this is on Tuesday, and was it Tuesday? Yeah. I saw a text just come over, and I saw the name Allison Lay, Rick's daughter, and I immediately thought, no, 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 no. There's only one reason she'd be texting me. Rick is either in the hospital or he's dead. And I just was praying I was wrong, and so to speak. Unfortunately, I wasn't. And, ever since the rest of that day, yesterday, all of today, I just can't seem to get a damn thing done. I mean, I've gotten a few things done, but I've just been really, really sad and, not really been able to function. Dave says, would you take a moment and speak about what Rick was like at the conventions you attended together? Yeah, he was he was he was always very it was easy to wear him out. He had to watch his balance. Um, things like that, the physical things. One time I told him to stay in my room and not book a room because I wanted to kind of watch over him, and which I shared that responsibility with Pete and some of the others. And not that it was a chore, believe me, it was always great hanging around Rick. And poor guy, he fell. I felt so bad. He fell right in front of me in the room and broke, I think it was his wrist. And of course, I'm not in the best of health either, and I couldn't quite catch him. And but he didn't think a thing of it. He was just so happy to be there. You know. Of course, we had to get it taken care of right away. Excuse me. But as far as what he was like in person and in the conventions, it's sort of like the podcast. He was just so excited to be there. I mean, he may have seemed like a quiet guy, and he was, but if you knew him, you could just see the feverish excitement in his eyes about being around so many other people that were interested in the same things he was in. And I mean, geez, forget the panels. Any panel he was on, he just he knew exactly why he was there and had all the information at his fingertips, which is to say in his mind. And every panel he was on was a great panel. Um, yeah, Mark, he was very passionate about all this, even though, as I say, he was a quiet guy. Um, he would love hanging out in the dealer's room. For anyone newer to the eZine family, he, the dealer's room is basically this huge room at Necronomicon or at any convention where there's a bunch of people selling their books or their items, things like that. And they usually I've somehow fooled them into thinking I'm somebody important, and they usually just give me a table, and I'll usually share that with Pete Rollick and maybe a couple of other people, depending. But I like being there, not because I've got any books to sell per se. Uh, I'm still working on that, but it's just so I can sit there and just take it all in. It's a great place to sit there, watch people walk by, take it all in, be with your fellow people, because they're all your people. 95% of them are, if not more. And that's a great place to hang out. And my point is that Rick liked to hang out in there too with us. I shared a photo, was it yesterday, of one of the dealer's rooms. It's from a dealer's room picture, and it's me and Doug Wynn, the writer Doug Wynn, and Pete and Rick and Jeff Thomas, the writer Jeff Thomas. And that photo is a snapshot of what it's like. You can see in Rick's eyes that he's just really happy to be there. So, is that on my Facebook page? I think it is. I would show you guys, but I'm not sure that you can see on the broadcast my screen shares. I got to figure out that problem. I've been told before that I can share with the fellow panelists, but the um, the audience can't see them, and there's got to be a way around that. Yeah, if you go to my Facebook page, I've got that from yesterday with his obituary. It's a really nice photo. And then, as long as we're talking about photos, tonight I posted on my Facebook page another picture of my office, the BookHouse, uh, from my Blink um, security camera. It's one of those cameras that kind of folds everything in and you can see everything at once. So so anyway, yeah, you can see that on Facebook. As a matter of fact, well, no, I better not try that. I'll end up kicking everybody out or something. So, if you have any stories about Rick you want to share or have any questions about Rick, please post them in the live chat. If you're watching later, post them down below and I'll get to them as I can. I want to read before we move on. I'm going to talk about Rick a lot, but tonight, but before I move on a little bit, I want to read just a few live or a few comments from like when I announced it on the website and um, the YouTube video. Joey Zone, yeah, some of you guys know who that is. Sympathies to you and his closest compadres. I had read Rick's scholarship before I ever met him, or the rest of the eZine crew at Necronomicon. I gave a shout out to him once across the vendor's room. That embarrassed him somewhat, but when you see the stars, you cry out. Well said. Um, let's see. Because of my age, it seems that I have entered a season in which the leaves are blown away from the limbs of the trees all around me. That's well said. You know, somebody said, Laird and I were talking about this a while back. There's no there's no difference between real life and the internet, so to speak. It's all real life. It's just a different way of communicating. Now, I suppose if you're using an alias and all that, maybe it's not quite as real. Maybe that's semantics, but when you're talking to real people on the internet, whether it's through Facebook or YouTube or anything else, and everyone's using their real names, everybody knows who everybody is. Many of us have met in person before. That's not, that's not, that's not real life. So my point is, a few people have commented, I only knew him through the podcast, but well, then you knew quite a bit about Rick, you know? Um, and he was happy to be on here every week and talking about all that stuff. And he spoke less and less over the years, but every time he did speak, he had something really intelligent to say. Somebody said something nice to me too in an email. They said that um, I always made sure, especially in later years, that with Rick's quiet voice, that if he had something to say, I would I would pause and you know single Rick out and say, Rick, did you want to say something? Because he couldn't really break into the conversation like the rest of us could. Let's see here. Just looking at you guys' live comments. Uh, oh, the boss said you can go to Necronomicon, Ben. That's good. Kevin says some of my favorite memories from the last Necronomicon was hanging out with everyone at your table. Yeah, the vendor's room, exactly. And even minding the store, so to speak, while you were getting some rest and Pete was at a panel. Yeah, there were many times when we're sitting at there and one of us has to do a panel or whatnot. And yeah, people would do that. Thanks, Kevin. Um, yeah, I think Chaz, I'm glad you're going to Necronomicon if you are, but I don't think it's too late to get a hotel room. Um, but I'm not the expert. There's probably some advice at necronomicon-providence.com, and I don't even know if guests if people who are visiting get a break on the room, um, or something like that. You know what I mean? But I would check there first before booking. your room for sure. So I mean, it's definitely costly. It's going to cost you for the flight, for the hotel room, and for food. But man, I'll tell you something, Chaz and everybody else. You go back from those, you go home from those conventions, and you're just kind of like your soul is full. You know what I mean? It's just so energizing and so uplifting. Um, it's really great. Either Necronomicon or the Lovecraft eZine, or what am I saying? Necronomicon or the HP Lovecraft Film Festival. So, oh yeah, train's even better. Um, so yeah, speaking of cons, I just out of curiosity, I asked the people in the Lovecraft eZine in the group who all lives in Texas, and I thought I'd get 2 or 3 people replying, but actually it looks like yeah, it's like 12 or 15 who replied. So it'd be kind of cool to do like a little eZine con or get together or something like that. That'd be pretty neat. And of course, it's not limited to people who are living in Texas. Anyone can come. I'm just saying those people are closer, and we'd probably have it in Dallas or Arlington or something. I don't know if we have it at all, but it's just something I've been mulling over. Oh, really? Okay, Alan. Alan's a quiet guy and he's excited. No, that was Kevin. Alan, I'll bring the bourbon. Uh, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Um, I mean, we'd have to raise some money for to rent out a place or something, but we'll figure it out. It wouldn't be like a regular convention with panels and things like that. It'd be more informal, like us talking over things, and people can bring their questions, and other people who are experts on that can answer them. I think that would be pretty cool. And it's welcome to anybody. I mean, I don't care if you're living in South Africa, if you want to come to the eZine Con. It's just going to be easier for those in Texas, of course. So, um, all right, you guys are encouraging me because if you're saying you'll actually do this, I'd want to plan it way in advance so that anybody who wants to come would have the opportunity to come and get the time off work and the money for travel and things like that. So, where was I? I was reading I was reading some comments um, about Rick, and let's go to let's go to the YouTube comments from the video where I announced that Rick had passed away. Give me a second here. Um, there we go. Boy, I look disheveled in that video. Not that I'm overly shoveled now. These are just a few. I always missed Rick when he wasn't on the show, which wasn't often, and in the last couple of years I seem to have a harder time hearing his comments. I'd often grab my headphones and rewind because I always wanted to hear what he had to say. He was such a knowledgeable guy. I will never be able to watch an episode without wishing he was there, but what a joy it was to listen in on his conversations with all the panelists and guests. To Mike and the eZine crew, as well as Rick's family, thank you for sharing him with us. Um, I don't know if I read all these, that's all I'd be doing the rest of the night. But yeah, I really appreciate all these comments. I need to go in there and reply to a few. I just had no motivation to do anything. Um, wow, hell of a lot of comments on the YouTube video. Rick was loved, that's for damn sure. I only knew Rick as a member of your podcast, but I will miss his vast wealth of knowledge. Yep, we will. And I guess even a couple of people didn't even know he had, was ill, but yeah, he had Parkinson's, and yeah, I was thinking about this. I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. Ben Hendelman said to me, we were talking about Rick or something, and about the podcast, and he said, "Well, Rick's the most important person on the podcast," and then he goes, "I hope that's not." Offensive, or I don't know exactly what it was you said, but I was not offended in the least because Ben was absolutely right in my view, and you know, he's gone now, and Ben would frequently say this to me, and I would frequently say it to Ben. His side comment for those of you watching later, I couldn't count how many times I've said Rick was amazing and the best part of the podcast, even on air with him and in messages to Mike. Yep, uh, he's irreplaceable, and this I got to really emphasize again that this isn't just his wealth of knowledge or the books that he wrote or the podcast this one that he contributed to or the pulp cons that he had gone to. It was um, it was the fact that he was such a kind person. There's a Dean Koontz book where, not a recent one. I don't care for the recent ones, but from like the late 90s, and then it's Fear Nothing is the title. And in the first chapter, the protagonist's father dies, and it's either there or later in the book that the protagonist writes that his father was a great man, and he wasn't great because he wrote a novel or did this or that or passed a law, anything like that. But I can remember one sentence exactly. He was great because he was kind. And that's that's Rick, totally Rick. That's a great idea, Chaz. My wife had the ideas. Let me read you. I'm going to read you guys a few ideas of my wife's that I wrote down, and I'm going to add that one. Rick Lay Prize. Okay, so that's a great idea. Another idea that Danielle had was, oh, thank you, Derek. I really appreciate it. Another idea that thanks for the dollars. Another idea that Danielle had was a Rickley Prize. Not prize. I'm sorry, that was Chaz's idea. A Rickley Award. Um, I think that would be great. Um, whether we do that or not, here's some of hers and my ideas the night that I found out about this. First of all, if you go to the Lovecraft eZine website, Rick's uh, the the announcement that he died is right up there at the top. But there's also a link to Parkinson's. His family asked that please, instead of flowers, to donate to Parkinson's, and we're going to do a Rick memorial and invite his pulp friends at some point in the next couple of weeks. And I'll have the Parkinson's and links up right at the top of the show notes and in the sidebar, and do our best to raise some more money for Parkinson's while we're chatting about Rick. And it'd be great to get this disease to the point where, like polio, almost no one ever dies from it anymore. I mean, when's the last time somebody died of polio in the country? But it was a scourge. What if we get Parkinson's there? So, um, so there's that. Oh, all right. Nikola Tesla is watching live too. Hey, man. Uh, I'm not gonna shout out your real name unless you want me to, man. But he said, "Thank, count me in for the eZine con." So thanks for all the encouragement, guys. Anyway, the other idea to raise money for Parkinson's is here's the other reason why I'm really angry at myself. Bridget and I have been brainstorming another. I'm gonna get the merch, the eZine store in gear, but I move slowly sometimes. But the next T-shirt is and was gonna be um, on the front with Rick's face saying "Rick is the goat," which, as probably most of you know, greatest of all time. I actually gave him a uh, goat T-shirt, said the goat on the front for Christmas a couple years ago, and he thought, until I explained it to him, he thought I was referring to Shub Niggurath or something. You know, the goat, the with 1,000 young or something like that. I'm like, no, you're the greatest of all time. And oh man, he just freaking glowed, man. He loved it. I mean, he was very he was not a person with an ego, but compliments like that. I mean, we're all human. He loved getting that. Anyway, Bridget and I have been working on a Rick is the Goat T-shirt with Rick's face on the front, and the Lovecraft Easing podcast on the back. And I'm really upset at myself for not getting that into gear before now. But because Rick would have really glowed again to see something like that. But I can't fix that now. But what I can do is for the two of us to try to get this done in the next couple of weeks so that it'll be available for anyone going to Necronomicon so they can buy one. And what I would love to see is a bunch of people walking around Necronomicon with Rick is the Goat t-shirts on with Rick's face. I think that would be awesome. I hope you do too. And, donate a significant, and I don't mean 5%, but a significant portion, at least half, a portion of that to Parkinson's. And I think that would be a good thing to do. I think it would be a fun thing to do. I mean, really, if I could give away free Rick is the Goat t-shirts, I'd do it. And say everybody, okay, you got the price of the t-shirt is you got to wear it to Necronomicons. I wish I could do that, but I can't. Uh, Rick Lay prize writing competition. Okay, I'm looking at the side chat again, you guys. Alan Hughes, as much as Rick knew about any subject, he never once had an attitude of superiority or corrected someone with a mocking attitude. A lesson to us all. Um, yeah, a prize that's given at the eZine Con, a Rick Lay prize. Scholarly works and a Pulver Award for fiction. That'd be great. The only thing, I have to be careful though that I don't bite off more than I can chew, because what you have to remember is that for every award you give out, you got to read a shit ton of stuff, you know? For example, a Pulliver Award for fiction is a wonderful idea. It really is. I mean that. But I'm also thinking about all of the books and short stories I would have to read for it. So some great ideas take more time than others, but the t-shirt idea should be quick and easy to do. So I hope you guys will consider buying a Rick Lay t-shirt when it comes out. When it does, I'll of course post it everywhere and talk about it on the podcast. It probably will be a little bit more expensive than regular t-shirts because it's going to have printing on both sides, but it is what it is. Most of them just have t-shirts on the front. By the way, if you have a regular eZine t-shirt, it'd be great if you wore that to Necronomicon too. Um, yeah, thanks, Jeff. He was never condescending. Ben, oh, Chaz is ahead of me. He would take readers and judging. By the way, Chaz, before I forget to say, I enjoy your private late night walking videos very much, the couple that you've sent me, because I often, when I'm walking late at night looking for scary houses to photograph or just walking because I don't want to walk during the day because it's too hot here. Uh, I'm thinking of all the eZine people who might get a kick out of what I post. What scary house that I find to take a picture of. I don't have to walk to look for trouble, Dave. It just finds me just fine on its own. Ben says, I remember when we did the call with him in the hospital. Yeah, what was that? 9 months to a year ago, Ben? Something like that. And he wanted to talk about Star Trek with me. It was great. He wanted to hear my thoughts. I felt so honored. Yeah, but if you would have told him you were honored, he would have thought to himself probably, oh, why? I'm just another guy. That's just how humble he was. His daughter had to cut him off of that call because he was getting too excited. Yep. Oh man, that's Rick. Rick dressed as the Shadow on a t-shirt. That'd be cool. Yeah, night walks. It's cooler, Kim, and I got to get back in shape anyway, man. I really do. I'm suddenly feeling very mortal over the last, first Joe and then Danielle's brothers, two of them in the same year, not that much older than us, and then now Rick. I better get into shape. I promised my wife, so this is serious. I promised my wife that I would outlive her because she said multiple times she doesn't want to live without me. Well, I don't want to live without her either, but I made the promise and I got to keep it. So, Ben, you're on a night walk now. Just hit my new 20-year weight low, 100, 107, well, you wrote it out, so I'll 173 and a half pounds, was 260 pounds 4 years ago. Yeah, I've seen you take that weight off over the last few years just on the podcast, man. Um, Hang on a second. Some guy is prank texting me. I don't know who that would be. You can shout me out. Sure. Okay. Nikola Tesla is my friend Vince. Oh, good idea. You hire volunteers to read award submissions. Yeah, that's a great idea. People I can trust. You're off that list, Vince. Sorry. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's a great idea. Uh, that is a really great idea. And I would imagine the way it would go is they'd weed it down, and then the panelists, like may say me, Pete, Matt, and the others could choose from what they sifted down. Ben, I have been thinking about you with the weight thing, and I really admire your willpower getting this done. Any tips you can throw my way, email me. I would gladly take them because I'm serious about this. I really don't care. It's not about looks or anything or the fact that I've got more of a belly than I like. I mean I do, but that's a minor thing compared to, living long enough for my family. That's the important thing. Thanks, Ben. Yep, Kevin nomination process. By the way, Vince, I've thanked you at least twice, and I will say in public now to everyone who is given to the Oreo Fund or joined the Patreon or upped their tier on the Patreon, uh, or just flat out sent me money through PayPal like Vince did. Thank you, man. I'm blown away by how much you sent, and I appreciate it, man. Same thing to everyone. The old story. What what is a lot of money to some people? For some people, giving $5 is more of a hardship than someone else giving 500. But it's all appreciated. So anyway, Okay, so it looks like you're motivated by the same things I am, Ben. Yeah, it it's a tough thing to put your family through. I've seen that with Danielle losing her two of her older brothers. Believe it or not, she's the youngest of six, four brothers and one sister. Kim says, I wrote Willem and Joe that tribute piece just after he died. I thought about doing one for Rick, but somehow it hit me differently. Rick just hit different somehow. Yeah. And for those of you who haven't been around a while yet, one day you'll be eZine veterans too, but I'm glad you're here, first of all. Secondly, Vince says, get your ass into the gym. I'm going to keep going with my night walks for now, but I'll get there. Yeah. Uh, let's just say I don't, I don't, I'm not someone who's got to attain a lot really, but if I do have something, a goal in mind, I always reach it, um, as all of us can. Anyway, for those of you who haven't been around a while, you may not know about H. Pugmire, uh, a writer and a really, really good friend of mine. Um, sometime when I'm talking about Willem, I'll make sure I bring the books over that are way over there. But he gave me a $100 book of his. Uh, I'm trying to think of the press that does these. Their main thing is they do these really expensive books that are like basically they're works of art, and they're out of my price range. But they've done them for a lot of writers. Um, I wouldn't say a lot. They pick who they want. But Willem gave me an extra copy of his and wrote a note in there, and that's one of my greatest treasures. He he wrote with David Barker a book, really great story, a book called The Revenant of Rebecca Pascal, and really moody Lovecraftian book that I really loved, even if it hadn't been dedicated to me, which it was. So just so nice. Those things like that are so nice. But he was just a really great guy, really flamboyant guy, and we lost him what 5 years ago, five and a half, something like that. Oh, there he is. Hey man, Vince. Centipede Press. That's it. Thank you. Uh, even if you can't afford it, you guys should Google Centipede Press. They really do make works of art. I'm lucky enough to have one of their books, and it's the one that Willem gave to me. All right, so real briefly, you guys may have seen the obituary that I posted of Rick. Real briefly, I'll touch on the funeral. The first thing I said when Danielle got home on Tuesday was like, I gotta go to the funeral. Allison, his Rick's daughter, told me it was going to be on Saturday with viewings on Friday, etc. I said I gotta go to the funeral. I owe Rick so much. I gotta go to his funeral. And she's really good at this stuff. So she immediately got online, was looking at plane tickets, hotel rooms. We're trying to mentally count up what Uber would be. Pete and I are on the phone talking about sharing a room, whether we should go, whether we shouldn't go. And, you know, it got up to like 1,500 bucks for everything. At least that was the minimum. I don't even know if that was counting meals. And then Danielle said, I have a smart wife. She goes, well, hear me out on this, but why give the money to airlines and hotels when you can give at least some of the money, at least some money to Parkinson's instead, what would Rick want or what would his family want? And she said, having experience with her brothers passing away and what it feels like to the family, that maybe it's a family thing, There's going to be other people there, obviously, but maybe, funerals are for the living, not for the dead. And we got to talking about what would Rick want? Which one would he rather do? I said, what about an online memorial about Rick where all of us are talking about him, telling stories about him, and all of this. If he could decide which one would he want, and I figured I knew which one he would want, and that would be the online thing because that lasts forever. Um, you record it, obviously, it lasts forever, and a few other ideas that she came up with, like Rick Lay panel at Necronomicon this fall or this August. Um, I don't know why I've written that twice in my notes, but I guess it's because it's really important, right? Rick Lay panel at Necronomicon. I sent an email to the organizer about that. Uh, Pete and I were talking about Rick Lay trivia, and some other ideas. I talked to Pete and Matt about it that night on the phone because out of the original panel cast, there's there were five. Uh, Me, Matt, Pete, Rick, and Joe. And I said to Pete on the phone, I said, we've lost three night chess. We've lost three of the five of the original. And Pete was like, "Oh my God, I didn't think of it that way." So anyway, the three of us decided that we thought that's what Rick would probably rather. I texted his daughter and I said, "When you have 5 minutes, if you have 5 minutes, I'd love to chat for 5 minutes." And she called me like 3 minutes later and we talked about this and she was crying and I was crying, but she thought it was just a really, really sweet idea. So that's what we're gonna do. So I don't know when yet, but it'll definitely be sometime this month. I'm very sure. So I want to put everyone's schedules together. So um there's all the Rick stuff. Um I don't know how much longer I'll be on because it's hard to it's hard to stay up this week. You know what I mean? Not up physically, up mood wise. Um, but let's see here. Talked about that. Talked about that. Oh, new Michael Shea book. I can't remember if it's out yet or not. Mama Dirt by Michael Shea. If you haven't read Michael Shea yet, definitely would enjoy him. Probably his most famous story is The Autopsy, a short story which was adapted for Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Uh, Laird Laird knew him, was a big fan of his, and knew him. Um, and I said to Laird, we should do it. Me and you should do a show on Mama Dirt and Michael Shea. So we're gonna do that. So pick that up sometime if you like Michael Shea. Yeah, I gotta say, Ben, all these people who have been screaming for years to get Guillermo del Toro to do At the Mountains of Madness, I don't know, man. I I just don't know. I think there's plenty of some other directors that would do a damn good job, and probably might sound like blasphemy, but probably better than Del Toro. Um, there were just a couple of the episodes that I liked. The rest of them, as you say, were not very good. I know that's subjective, but a lot of us seem to be agreeing about that. Um, my brain's doing that blanking thing again, but who's the guy who directed the Dark Knight trilogy and the let's see what was the World War II nuclear thing. Christopher Nolan. Thank you, Ben. You know what I would love to see is Christopher Nolan directing At the Mountains of Madness. I think that would be great. And by the way, um, he is mulling over doing a horror movie. In fact, he almost pushed. Um, I'm going to keep doing it. God damn it. Um, Not Insomnia. Inception. Yeah. He almost pushed Inception into a horror movie, and you can definitely see how in some ways it is a horror movie. You know, with the wife committing suicide to get out of the reality, or did she? You know, that sort of thing. There are definitely some horrific and scary elements to that film. I don't know who I'd want to have star in it, Dave. Nolan has no passion for Lovecraft, Joe. Okay. How do you know? Has he commented on it? Um, that's interesting. Dave says as long as it does not star Tom Cruise or Johnny Depp. I think I'm with you on that. Um, hmm. Could play the who should it star game. I don't know, but definitely someone who's a character actor. You know, is this is not a hero's journey movie by any means. Wouldn't you say? Um, by the way, the At the Mountains of Madness audio drama by the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society and all of their Lovecraft audio dramas are amazing. And you guys should listen to those, pick those up and listen to those if you haven't yet. Um, and if you're able to afford the CD versions, they send you all kinds of cool paraphernalia that go along with the story. So, yeah, Ben, that might be. Um, and by the way, I love the people who are part of the eZine family like you guys, where we can disagree about something or discuss something without getting pissed. You know, like attracts like. So I appreciate you guys. So Ben says, I don't need the director to be a vocal Lovecraft fan. I need them to be competent and understand it and how to adapt it. Um, yeah, yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think if Christopher Nolan right now is mulling over what kind of horror story he wants to make into a movie, and let's just say, I don't know any of this, but let's just say that all right, he runs across, I'm going to check out some Lovecraft. Maybe he hasn't read any since he was 13 years old, or maybe he's never read it. Who knows? Um, Took me to my early to mid 20s to discover Lovecraft, and I read voraciously growing up. I didn't even have a TV. Anyway, um, let's say he stumbles across Shadow Out of Time, or At the Mountains of Madness, or Call of Cthulhu, or whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is the stuff. I think I could do this justice. Man, then I would love it. Because then he would develop a passion for it. Night, Mitch. I assume you got to work in the morning, man. Have a good night. Sleep well. Um, so, yeah, Ben, you raise a good point. Joe, you raise a good point too. But I don't know that he's not really active online or anything like that. I don't believe he has social media. In fact, I've heard that he writes all his scripts on a old computer that's not connected to the internet. Um, and that everyone he's considering being a star in a film, they've got to go to his house and talk to him. He doesn't really do Zoom or that kind of stuff. So in some ways, he's really old school, which would adapt to Lovecraft pretty well if you think about it. So, Ben, stop making good points because I have to read them. Kidding, man. Sometimes hardcore fans can't see beyond their own fandom. It can harm the project. Look at the remake of Psycho, for example. Brian says maybe get Mike Flanagan to adapt Lovecraft. Yeah, and he's probably thinking about it because Flanagan is a Lovecraft fan. For those of you who don't know, back in the day, after his first movie, Absentia, which if you haven't seen, you should, I interviewed him and I said, Mike, by the way, I don't know if you're familiar with Lovecraft, but quite a bit of this mood of this film struck me as very Lovecraftian. And he was like, he really got into that. He loved the fact that I picked up on that because he said he was a huge Lovecraft fan. And so, yeah, I would not be surprised at all if Flanagan is mulling it over for one of his future projects. And I would not be surprised at all to see him do a great job at it. And I'm basing that on Absentia. I'm basing that on most of his stuff. There's only been like one, maybe two projects of his that I didn't care for, but I would say 90% of what he does, I subjectively personally like, and he always does a fantastic job. So, wait, what? Flanagan's doing the Dark Tower? Wow. Oh, Joe, that's a good point. I'm very interested always in movies and TV shows with the Lovecraftian vibe or the cosmic horror vibe. Um, but I do think, and I've got a list of these on my on at the Lovecraft eZine website, that there are quite a few by now that have done a reasonably good up to great job. So we don't really have very many really decent Lovecraft adaptions, straight up Lovecraft adaptions. So that's why my mind over the years has gone more towards wanting to see something like that. Especially, well, one of my favorites is The Shadow Out of Time. I'd love to see that adapted. And um, I'd love to see At the Mountains of Madness adapted. Let's see. Somebody else messaged me. I think it was. Holy shit, man. Uh, Alan, is it okay if I just briefly talk about this? I know it's a quick sketch, so I won't show it if you don't want me to. But Alan Hughes just sent me a private message. Quick sketch I threw together during your late night talk. Okay, so I'm looking at Carcosa, and I'm looking at, man, these are really good. Man, this is how you do real quick. I mean, I know I've seen your art. I know how good of an artist you are, and it is Joe Pulver recognizably greeting Rick Lay and welcoming him to Carcosa. So I know it's preliminary, so I won't show it unless you tell me to. That is great. That's exactly what I have in mind. I'd probably just have a couple of quick notes on the city itself, but it's like 50 to 75% of what I was thinking of. The city, I mean, the other two are. It's a fantastic. It's amazing, Alan. Never understood. Um, okay, he wants me to show it to you guys so that you guys can throw him any ideas. So let me pull out my phone here, and hopefully you can see this, but I have a feeling you won't be able to. All right, it's not working, Alan. We'll have to do it in some other way if we can. Um, Short version is I love it, man. And um, yeah, I don't know if you saw my artist call out, but my brain has not been working. I should have come straight to you with it as well. So let's see here. Okay, so Flanagan is doing the Dark Tower for Amazon. Well, a TV series is definitely the way to go as opposed to movies. Oh, by the way, is anyone here fans of Roger Zelazny's Amber series? Uh, I'm a huge fan. I read the books probably at least 10 times since I was a kid. Um, and I forget who and where, but they're working on a TV series based on the chronology or the Chronicles of Amber. So, um, Joe, that's a really good point. Something I tire of as well. The thing with Joe says the thing with adaptions is the conversation is always about what was missing or what was changed. Tom Bobadil, right? Quite frankly, I'm tired of that conversation. It's adaptation, change is always required. That is exactly it. Uh, if you want everything that's in the book, reread the book. Okay, it's a movie adaptation or it's a TV adaptation. You know, look at how huge for the day the Lord of the Rings was, and yep, that is an that those three movies are an amazing feat. Don't ask me about The Hobbit, but The Lord of the Rings, that's an amazingly well done three set of movies, you know? But there are some folks who find something to bitch about. So I guess there'll always be people who bitch. Um, yeah, I would say if you haven't read the Amber series, the first five books are where it's at. They're about this guy called Corwin. You don't want to really read too much about it because if you're lucky, you'll be as I was when I was 11 years old reading it for the first time, and you don't know what's going on. You just know that this guy wakes up in a hospital and he has no idea who he is. Um, but the first five books are about this character. He's called Corwin, and the next five books are about his son, whose name is Merlin. They're okay. I mean, it is Roger Zelazny. He was great. But they're not as good as the first five. I read the first five books, as I say, like 10 times. I've read the next five maybe twice in 40 years, 45 years, something like that. So, um, so yeah, they're going to be, for anyone who are fans of that, they're going to be doing that. So if you guys, I want to start wrapping up here and go to bed. But if you have any other things you want to talk about or want me to talk about, put them in the side chat. And you guys are making me feel a little bit cheered up by being there and holding a conversation with me. I appreciate it. Um, Robert Frost is my favorite poem. I don't talk about this much, but I love poetry. Um, I've created poetry, written poetry, excuse me, created poetry. Once won a nationwide poetry contest, first place, but now I'm just bragging. My wife entered me into it. I didn't even know about it till she said I won. But the prize is really where it's at. It was a $100 gift certificate to Barnes and Noble. Yep, writing is creating. So anyway, I've been reading Robert Frost poems. He's a lot darker than I think a lot of people think. I was going to read some of those tonight, but I think I may save that for next week. That's the thing about poetry and art and prose and art in many form, in all its forms, whether it's music or poetry or novels or anything. Um, I saw a video on YouTube of an actor recently, and he was talking about art in all its forms, and he said something to the effect that it's not this it's not this what's the word, this extra thing that we don't really need, but it's just something that we want. It enriches our lives, but it's not a need, it's a want. And he's like, it absolutely is a need. Wait till the first time that you go through something really, really hard and you're reading poetry or you're watching movies or you're listening to music, trying to get through it, and you'll realize how much you need art in whatever form you're talking about. Anyway, that's what I've been sort of doing with Robert Frost, rereading a bunch of poems. Where's my Frost book? Yeah, complete poetry of Robert Frost right there. Um, and it's it's been very helpful. Um, yeah, Charles Bukowski, I like him too. Dracula's about to start. What do you mean? Is it on TV? What else did I want to say before we? Alan Smolling, if you're still here, I haven't been able to reply to your question and comments about Obsidian in your message to me, but I'll probably just spend a few minutes on that next week if that's okay. Hey, it's Cody Lakin, writer at large. Hey, buddy. Um, what else do we have here? I will say that I tried out an AI called Perplexity and was I was pretty impressed with it at first, but over time I realized that it really wasn't as impressive as I thought it was, over testing it out for a few weeks. Oh, thanks, Cody. Cody says, love these late night walks. Glad you decided on doing it tonight. I appreciate it, man. Um, and I appreciate, by the way, Cody, I appreciate you putting up with me being slow and posting your article. And I wanted to say, too, I'll just say this in public and embarrass you instead of the email I was going to send. I really enjoy reading your, whatever you want to call them, like mini essays about different things on Facebook. And I would love for you to post some of those on the Lovecraft eZine website sometime if you want to, because I've really enjoyed reading them, and I'd love for even more people to read them. But anyway, Perplexity, yeah. Um, Chat GPT, I tried right at the beginning, and I mean it's good. I mean AI is impressive in a lot of ways. Now I've gone back to Chat GPT just to test it out for a few days to a week because they've got a new thing called memory. And the reason why, oh, Dracula Daily is about to start. Yeah. Yeah, we had one of the creators on that last year, didn't we? Anyway, uh, this new thing called Memory with ChatGPT. It's for the Plus members, so I splurged a little bit amount of money it is and said I'm going to try it for a month. But this seems to me to come the closest to actually having a personal AI assistant than anything else because the way the memory feature works is it does exactly that. If you tell it my name's Mike, I live in this town in Texas, my wife's name is this, and by the way, I like Lovecraftian stuff. I like time travel stories and blah blah blah, so forth and so on. It'll remember all that. Now you can easily tell it to forget everything about you. Um, but if you, I mean, don't give it your social security number, but if you tell it about yourself and you keep telling it about yourself, then it learns more and more about you and can supposedly suggest things and do things more fine-tuned to you than just being another AI that forgets the conversation as soon as you're done with the conversation. So I'm trying that out, and if any of you try it out, email me and let me know what your experience is with it because I think AI has a real place as being just that, like a Jasper Iron Man assistant. Like it handles the grunt work or it gives you suggestions about, hey, by the way, I know you watched this movie the other night. Here's one that's similar. That's great. Or a lot of other things that I can't think of right now. That would be really helpful. Not creating art, not helping you write, not helping you paint. None of that shit. I don't know why some people seem to think that robots are suddenly supposed to be creating our art instead of doing our grunt work like they're supposed to. It seems to me that the robots, the AIs, they're supposed to be doing the grunt work for us, thereby freeing us up to create more art, right? Um, so anyway, there's my thoughts on the whole thing. Yeah, email me with the article anytime, Cody. I know I haven't caught every single one of your uh, little mini essays on Facebook, but every one that I have come across, I've really enjoyed, and I've been meaning to send you a message about this. So I'm glad you're on tonight. Um, so, oh yeah, Alan did. I didn't remember that Alan Hughes did art for Dracula Daily. Um, do you guys all know what Dracula Daily is? It's pretty cool. I won't go into it, but if somebody says they don't, I'll maybe Kim can say what it is or something. Um, what else do I have? So I'm gonna inflict you with a couple of Robert Frost poems next week, next Thursday. Oh, I do not know if the panelists and I. This is one thing because I knew this would be a little bit easier than the Sunday podcast, and I've got a guest scheduled too. But I don't know. I'm gonna leave it up to them in part about doing a podcast this Sunday. I'm I'm just I'm just too sad. I've held it together for this, but um, we'll see. And the I really think a lot of my guests, Corey, you can look him up on the Lovecraft eZine calendar, because I don't know how to pronounce his last name yet. I've just read it for a long time on social media and other places. Um, but he sent me this. I told him I wasn't sure if I could do it this Sunday, and that maybe if I didn't, we could do it sometime during the week next week. And he was very kind and very understanding about it. Um, so so anyway, I don't know about Sunday, but I'll keep you guys posted. All right, anything else before I go? I'm sure I enriched all your lives with the AI chat there, Perplexity versus Chat GPT memory. Um, well, Dracula, as you guys all know, is a epistolatory um, book. So, all the entries are dated, they're diary entries, they're letters, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's a million people who could explain this better than I'm explaining it right now, but someone had the idea to put out a chapter of the book Dracula on this website, just on the dates that they really happen in the novel, which I think is really, really, really a fun idea. Oh, thanks for being here, Thunder Kitten. Uh, yeah, so it's a pretty cool thing. Um, anyway, I think that's all I got. I do have one last question for you guys. Social media is kind of changing, you know. Um, it's evolving. I really think the future is with social media like Mastodon, where email. If I want to email Ben Handelman, he doesn't have to be on Gmail. He could be use something else. We don't have to be on the same, at gmail.com for him to receive it. Same thing with texting, right? I've got an Android. I can text my wife who has an iPhone. So, oh, Ben in the side comments, Ben is, like I said, doing a better job of explaining Dracula Daily than I did. But so really the same thing, that's what Mastodon is. And things like Mastodon, the Fediverse, Fediverse. If you're not familiar, just obviously Google it. But it basically has to do with something else that Ben could explain better than me since he's a computer guy. The same concept of if I post something here, then you may be on a different social media, but you can still read it and you can still follow me if you're so inclined. I really think the future of social media is is with social media like Mastodon, and I'm going to start posting more and more there. My direct question for you guys is not so much about Mastodon at this point, but I'd love for people to follow me on Mastodon. I got like 3 followers, but I do believe in the future of it, so that's why I'm doing it. I have like the Facebook page is what 220,000 followers, and I do think Facebook will last a long time, but I don't want to put all my apples in I don't want to put all my eggs in the same basket. Not to mix metaphors. I don't want to put all my apples in the same ox cart. God damn it. Um. Anyway, what are you guys? Where are you guys on social media? Facebook mostly, Twitter. I'm sorry, X Twitter, or the newer ones, Blue Sky. I don't understand Threads at all. I'm on it. I can't. It doesn't even seem to want to allow me to be on the feed of anyone I'm following. I'm about done with it. But let me know where you guys are at. Yeah, Discord. That's another one. Um, I'm not big on social. I don't. There are a lot of aspects of social media I don't like, but there are some good aspects to it too. I absolutely know that I wouldn't be probably on social media at all if I wasn't doing what I'm doing. That doesn't mean I hate it. It's the best way to keep people informed. One of the best ways. Email list, that's pretty valuable too, which I have. If you go to the Lovecraft eZine website and you sign up for to be notified when I write another blog post, then that's the email list. It's got like, I don't know, 12,000 people on it, something like that. But I think 12,000 people on an email list is more valuable than 50,000 people on Twitter, to be honest. Oh, Instagram. Yeah, ironically, it's I was talking to Laird like 9 months ago on the phone. I was like, I just nuked all my social media accounts except for Facebook. I nuked Instagram, I nuked Twitter. I'm sick of the whole thing. And he's like, that was a good thing to do. And then I realized, I don't know, I kind of enjoy Instagram. So I'm building my following back up. And that's where I'm posting those night photos, those creepy night photos. So follow me on Instagram if you feel like it. But I'm just curious about you guys. Um, I was gonna nuke Twitter. I nuked my personal account on Twitter. I was going to nuke the Lovecraft eZine account, um, but I put out a poll, and the overwhelming majority did not want me or the eZine to leave Twitter as of yet, so I haven't. Um, oh, that's cool. Um, yeah. Okay. First of all, Joe's comment um, that you love social media. So many small publishers and artists to follow. Bad shit is easy to block. That is exactly the case. It. I've heard from so many people over the years. Yeah, I'm on Twitter, not on Facebook. I mean, Facebook is just a nightmare. Then I've heard the exact same thing when those were the big two. That I'm not on Twitter. Oh my God, what a nightmare! I'm just on Facebook. And really, I think it boils down to you curating your feed more than anything. Um, and it is easy to block people that are assholes. So my slogan is "Don't be an asshole, and I won't be blocked." That's trademarked. Uh, so you're absolutely right, Joe. Secondly, thanks Kim for following me on Mastodon. Even if you didn't tell me that you were under the Mad Pianist, I would know. So, but thanks for telling me. And Cody says your Instagram made me realize I'm not alone in taking night walks. Yeah, thanks, man. Um, I don't know. It's like doing this show at night, right? It's like talking at night about stuff like this. there's something different about walking at night. It's almost more personal, and it's quieter, and it also makes me think of the what Lovecraft wrote about. Um, you can't say that you've what did he say? You can't say that you haven't tried being a writer if you haven't wrote at night, something to that effect. So so there you go. It is 11:30 my time, so I'm gonna sign off here in a second. So I don't actually know if I'll get to that night walk tonight, but I will say this. Oh, he did? Oh, cool. Ray Bradbury loved night walks. I will say this. My wife is trying to cheer me up and made my favorite pie, which is custard pie, and it is sitting in the fridge right now. So the anything with the diet, Ben, is gonna have to wait till that pie is gone, which will probably be this time tomorrow. There's just something I love custard pie. Oh my God. I'm sure this is what you guys signed up to hear, right? But I love custard pie so much. I mean, it's way above chocolate, above anything. I don't know why. Well, then punish me, damn it. Send me custard pie, Dave. Anyway, guys, thank you for cheering me up. Um, I'll I'll try to stay cheered up as much as I can. But the fact is, we've lost somebody that is irreplaceable, right? So I can see I put my here. Let's fix that. I was curious about how that worked. There we go. Someone that's irreplaceable. So if you got a glass, let's raise it to Rick Lay, and we will do a show focused on him very, very soon. So everybody, thanks for everything. Thanks for being here, and I may see you Sunday, but for sure if I don't, I will see you next Thursday night.